Don't drink it or else! Soriea's scream ripped through the billionaire's bedroom as the cup of tea shook inches from his lips, and his wife's smile shattered into raw panic. The maid he barely noticed was now the only thing between him and a quiet, untraceable death, even though she came into his house to destroy him. So why is the woman who wants him dead standing at his bedside, and the girl who hates him the one begging him to live? Don't drink it or else! The scream tore through the bedroom like breaking glass. Alec Donovan's hand froze. The cup trembled just inches from his lips. His tired eyes snapped toward the doorway where his maid stood, chest heaving, fingers gripping the frame like she might collapse without it. Across the room, his wife Lyra went still. The gentle smile she'd worn a second ago cracked down the middle. Her eyes flashed with something raw before she forced her face back into wounded innocence. Nobody moved. If you saw someone you worked for, about to drink something deadly, would you risk everything to stop them? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Soriea? Alec's voice came out rough. What is this? Her gaze locked on the cup in his hand, then shifted to his face. Tears gathered in her eyes, but behind them sat something heavier, guilt, and a decision that had just cost her more than he could ever guess. Please, sir, she said, voice shaking, don't drink it. If you drink that tea, you won't wake up. Lyra laughed sharply. She's lost her mind. You've been too soft on her, Alec. This is what happens when you blur lines with staff. But Soriea barely heard her. This wasn't how she'd planned to break him. This wasn't how any of this was supposed to go. She came here weeks ago with a different plan entirely, a darker one. Yet here she stood, between him and the death she once thought he deserved, screaming for him to live. The mansion seemed to hold its breath. The golden brown tea shivered in the porcelain cup. Outside, storm clouds gathered like they'd been waiting for this exact moment. Soriea, Alec said carefully, lowering the cup just slightly. You understand what you're accusing my wife of, right? If you're wrong, there's no going back from this. I know, her voice cracked, but I'm not wrong. Lyra stepped forward, placing her tray down with unnecessary force. This is insane. You're stressed, Alec. She knows it. Maybe she thinks if she causes drama, she gets closer to you. She's been watching you, following you around this house like a lost puppy. That's not true. Heat flushed Soriea's face. Then what is true? Lyra snapped. Soriea's heart hammered against her ribs. Every word she spoke now would change everything. Her job, her mother's treatment, her future. But if she stayed silent, a man would die tonight. Even if that man was the one she came here to destroy. I watched you, Soriea said, eyes locked on Lyra. In the kitchen, just now, you pulled a small bottle from your bag, white cap, clear glass. You poured powder into his tea and stirred until it disappeared. Her voice steadied. If I'm lying, let her prove me wrong. Let her give you that bag. The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Alec turned slowly toward his wife. Your bag, he said quietly. The one you brought into the kitchen. Bring it here. Lyra's jaw tightened. You're not really doing this. You're going to search my things because of a girl who showed up here a few weeks ago with a sad story? Either you bring it, Alec replied, or I call security, and they bring it. The words hung in the air like smoke. Soriea's hands trembled at her sides. This was happening faster than she'd imagined. She'd spent weeks planning a different way to break him, gathering secrets, building a case, preparing to watch his perfect world collapse from the inside. But she hadn't planned on saving him first. She came here for revenge. She screamed for his life instead. And now, standing in that doorway, with her heart trying to break through her chest, she realized the most dangerous thing she'd ever done wasn't planning his destruction. It was choosing his survival. Because the woman who wanted him dead wasn't some stranger in the shadows. She was standing right beside his bed, holding a tray with poisoned tea, and she was his wife. The silence in the room felt heavier than any sound. Alec lowered the cup slightly but didn't put it down. His eyes moved between the two women. The maid in the doorway shaking. The wife at his bedside, shaking with something else entirely. Soriea, he said carefully. You understand what you're accusing my wife of, right? If you're wrong, there is no going back from this. I know, she whispered. But I'm not wrong. Lyra stepped forward, placing the tray on the bedside table with unnecessary force. The cup rattled against the saucer. This is insane, Lyra snapped. You're stressed, Alec. She knows it. Maybe she thinks if you fire me, she gets closer to you. She's been watching you, following you around this house like a lost puppy. That's not true, Sorier protested, heat hitting her face. I watched her, in the kitchen, just now. She pulled a small glass bottle from her bag. White cap, clear glass. She poured the powder into your tea and stirred it until it disappeared. Her voice cracked, but her eyes held steady. If I'm lying, she said, let her prove me wrong. Let her give you that bag. Alec turned slowly toward Lyra. Your bag, he said quietly. The one you brought into the kitchen. Bring it here. Her jaw tightened. You're not really doing this. You're going to search my things because of a girl who showed up here a few weeks ago with a sad story? Either you bring it, he replied, or I call security and they bring it. The words hung between them. If someone you loved demanded to see your phone or your ward bag right now, would you panic or hand it over without hesitation? Soriella's heart hammered against her ribs. This was happening faster than she'd imagined. She wanted him to see the truth about his life. She'd spent weeks planning a different way to break him, quietly, strategically, from the inside. But she hadn't planned on saving him first. Lyra's breathing changed. Her chest rose and fell faster. Her fingers curled at her sides. Fine, she said through her teeth. If this is what it takes to prove how ridiculous this is. She walked to the dresser near the window. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor. Each step sounded louder than it should have. She grabbed her designer handbag, black leather, gold clasp, the kind that cost more than Soriella made in 3 months. She turned back and held it out toward Alec. Here, she said. Search it. Embarrass me. Let the help accuse me in my own home. Go ahead. Alec took the bag from her hands. He set it on the bed. The zipper made a soft sound as he pulled it open. Soriella held her breath. Inside, the bag looked normal at first. Lipstick, compact mirror, breath mints, a slim wallet, car keys, tissues. Alec's hand moved deeper. His fingers closed around something small and hard. He pulled it out slowly. A glass bottle. Clear, small, white cap. He held it up to the light. Barely any powder left inside, but enough to see it had been there. Lyra's face drained of color. That's not mine, she said quickly. Someone put that there. She put it there. She's been in our room. She could have planted it. Alex stared at the bottle, then at the cup of tea still sitting on the tray. Why would she plant evidence? He asked slowly, and then screamed to stop me from drinking it. Lyra opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I don't know, she said. Maybe she's smarter than she looks. Maybe this is some sick game. Alex set the bottle down on the nightstand next to the cup. Side by side, they told a story even before any test. Call Dr. Harris, Alex said, his voice flat. Tell him to come now, and bring a testing kit. Alec, please. Now, Lyra. She flinched at the tone. Soriella's legs felt weak. She gripped the doorframe to steady herself. She thought exposing his wife's affair would be enough revenge. She thought watching his perfect marriage crack would satisfy the anger she'd carried for years. She never thought she'd be standing here, watching him hold poison meant for his own body. And she definitely never thought the person who wanted him dead would be sleeping beside him every night. Lyra's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone, but her eyes, when they flicked toward Soriella, weren't filled with fear. They were filled with pure, cold hatred, because Soriella had just done something unforgivable. She'd gotten in the way. 7 weeks before that scream, Soriella stood outside Alec Donovan's gate with a different kind of fire in her chest. The mansion in front of her looked unreal. Glass and white stone, manicured lawns, black steel gates that whispered money and power. To anyone else, it was just a billionaire's house. To her, it was the final destination of a journey that started years ago. The day her father didn't come home from the factory. She had seen his name long before she'd seen his face. Alec Donovan. On settlement papers. On legal letters. On documents that said compensation in neat print, while her family's life fell apart in chaos. She had grown up hearing his name spoken in tired anger. At the clinic. At home. In whispered prayers when the bills were due and the medicine ran low. To her, he wasn't a man. He was a symbol of how people with money broke people without it, and walked away. Have you ever hated someone you never met because of what they took from you? So no, she didn't just stumble into his job listing. She hunted for it. She searched every corner of the internet until she found an opening in his house. Housekeeper. Live-in staff. Good pay. Discretion required. Perfect. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another message from the clinic reminding her that her mother's medication was due. The same medication that kept her mother breathing after the factory accident, crushed her spine, and left her in a bed she couldn't leave. Soraya swallowed hard. This job was survival. But in the quiet part of her heart, it was also justice. Not the kind the court had given. Her kind. She pressed the intercom button with a steady hand. Yes? A voice asked. My name is Soraya, she said. I'm here for the housekeeping job interview. The gate hummed and began to open. As she walked up the driveway, she whispered under her breath, This is it, Mom. I'm in his house now. One way or another, he's going to feel what we felt. Her father's face flashed in her mind. The last morning she saw him, tired but smiling, kissing her forehead before heading to work. The call that came 6 hours later. The hospital hallway that smelled like bleach and death. The doctor who couldn't look her in the eye. The settlement offer that arrived 3 weeks later like it could buy back a life. She reached the front door and stopped. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished glass. Young, angry, desperate. Behind that glass lived the man whose signature had dismissed her father's death as an acceptable loss. A line item. A legal matter handled by people in suits who never had to watch a family break. Some people walk past injustice and move on. But what do you do when injustice has a name and an address? She straightened her shoulders, steadied her breathing. She didn't know exactly how she'd do it yet. Maybe she'd find financial secrets. Maybe she'd expose his affairs. Maybe she'd leak something so damaging that his perfect world would crack the way hers had. But she would do it. Because revenge wasn't loud. It was patient, strategic, and it started with a single step through the right door. The door opened before she could knock. And there he stood, Alec Donovan, the man she had hated for years without ever seeing his face. Except he didn't look like the villain she'd imagined. No smug smile, no expensive suit. Just a dark shirt, sleeves rolled, tie loosened. His face held lines of exhaustion she hadn't expected to see. Alec Donovan, he said simply. You must be Soraya. Yes, sir. He stepped aside and let her in. The house swallowed her. Tall ceilings, quiet corridors, the faint smell of expensive soap, and something floral. Everything felt too smooth, too clean, too easy. He led her into a bright sitting room and motioned for her to sit. He remained standing. Tell me about yourself, he said. She had practiced this. My name is Soraya. I'm the oldest of 3. My mother is sick and stays at a clinic near our town. I've worked cleaning offices and homes for the last few years. I can cook, clean, iron, manage schedules. I don't steal. I don't lie. That part was true. The part she didn't say, I came here to break you. I came here to be the ending you signed into my life. She just didn't know yet how much that promise would cost her. The man she had hated for years stood right in front of her. Except he didn't look like the villain she'd imagined. No smug smile, no arrogance dripping from his voice. Just exhaustion carved into his face like he'd been carrying weight for too long. Who's taking care of your mother now? He asked. The clinic, she said. As long as we keep up with payments. He nodded slowly. Something in his eyes shifted. Not pity. Something closer to understanding. If I hire you, he asked, how long will you stay? As long as I need to, she said. As long as it takes to make you pay. Before he could answer, gentle footsteps approached from the hallway. Soraya turned her head. A woman flowed into the room in silk and perfume. Her smile looked practiced, like something she wore instead of felt. Her eyes slid over Soraya, taking in every flaw. The worn shoes, the simple clothes, the calluses on her hands. "You didn't tell me she'd arrived," the woman said. Her voice was soft, but it carried an edge. "This is the applicant?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. Alec nodded. "Yes. This is Soraya." The woman extended a hand, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Lyra, Alec's wife." Soraya shook her hand. Lyra's grip was light, almost dismissive, like she was touching something she didn't want to hold for too long. "Have you worked in homes like this before?" Lyra asked sweetly. "No, ma'am," Soraya admitted. "But I learned fast." Lyra's smile sharpened. "These floors cost more than some houses. One scratch, one wrong product, and we pay more fixing your mistake than your salary is worth." Heat flushed up Soraya's neck. "Have you ever been in a room where someone made you feel small without raising their voice?" "I understand," she murmured. Alec's expression tightened. He looked at his wife for a moment, then back at Soraya. "I've made my decision," he said. "If she wants the job, it's hers." Lyra blinked. "Already?" "Yes." He looked at Soraya. "Do you want it?" She thought of her mother in a clinic bed, her father's photo on the nightstand back home, the years of quiet rage that had built inside her chest like a storm waiting to break. "Yes, sir," she said. "I do." Lyra's jaw tightened for just a second before the smile returned. "Well then," she said lightly. "Welcome to the family." The word family tasted wrong in the air. Alec extended his hand. Soraya shook it. His grip was firm, but not crushing. When their hands touched, something unexpected happened. She felt human warmth instead of the cold metal she'd imagined, and that made everything harder. "You'll start tomorrow," Alec said. "We'll have a room ready for you by evening. Bring what you need. If there's anything missing, let us know." "Thank you, sir." He nodded and walked out of the room, leaving her alone with Lyra. The moment he was gone, Lyra's smile disappeared. "Let me be clear," she said quietly. "This house runs a certain way. You follow instructions. You stay in your lane. You don't ask questions about things that don't concern you." Soraya met her gaze. "Understood." Lyra stepped closer. "And one more thing. My husband is a kind man. Some people mistake kindness for weakness. Don't be one of those people." She turned and walked out, heels clicking against the marble floor. Soraya stood alone in the bright sitting room, staring at the space where Lyra had been. She came here expecting a monster in a mansion. Instead, she found a tired man who asked about her mother, and a wife who smiled like a knife. That night, lying in her small bed in her old apartment, Soraya stared at the ceiling. She thought about the way Alec had looked at her, not with suspicion, not with judgment, just with quiet attention, like he actually cared about the answer. It would have been easier if he'd been cruel. But revenge doesn't ask for easy. It asks for commitment. And she'd already made hers. She whispered into the dark. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I have to do this. For Dad. For us. For everyone he left behind without a second thought." What she didn't know yet was that two stories had just started in the same house. His, trying to move forward from a past that haunted him. Hers, trying to drag him back into it. And only one of them would survive what came next. The first week felt like learning a new language. There was a right cloth for every surface, the right cleaner for each material. The kitchen alone had more rules than her entire childhood home. But Soraya adjusted quickly. She wrote things down, observed, adapted. She woke before dawn, cooked, cleaned, ironed, organized. Her body ached, but she liked the routine. It kept her mind from spiraling too far into old memories. She also watched, not obviously. She had grown up understanding that poor people don't get to stare for too long. But she noticed the way Alec moved through his own house. Like someone passing through a hotel, not a home. How he came in late, shoulders drooped, tie half undone. How he sometimes sat alone in the kitchen, staring at nothing while the city lights reflected off the glass. This was not the untouchable giant she'd pictured. He was still guilty in her mind. but guilt now had a human face. Lyra, however, fit the picture perfectly. She floated on heels, perfume announcing her before her voice did. She smiled when Alec entered a room and rolled her eyes as soon as he turned away. She corrected Soriea's smallest mistakes, sometimes with a smile, sometimes with a sharp word. "You missed a spot. This is not how I like my pillow arranged. Try again, and do it properly this time." Every small humiliation built a quiet anger in Soriea's chest. She used that anger as fuel. While cleaning Alec's office one afternoon, she noticed a locked file drawer, financial reports, legal folders, press clippings. She didn't touch what was locked yet, but she memorized what she could: company names, subsidiaries, the names of men who had worked under him. When you work in someone's house, you see things they forget you're seeing. What would you notice if you were invisible in someone's life? One evening, Lyra left her laptop open in the sitting room. Soriea walked past, glanced at the screen. Emails, calendar events, a name that appeared too often. Rian. Cousin, the contact said. But the messages didn't read like family. Miss you. When is he leaving again? Can't wait. Soriea kept walking like she'd seen nothing, but she filed it away. Another night, she overheard Lyra on the phone in the guest room. The door was cracked. Her voice was low, almost sweet. "I know, baby. Just a little longer. Once everything is in place, we won't have to pretend anymore." Soriea's pulse quickened. She moved away before the floorboards could betray her. Revenge wasn't going to be some wild, loud act. It was going to be patient, strategic. She would learn his weaknesses from the inside, gather the pieces. And one day, when he least expected it, she would make sure his world fell apart the way hers had. But something strange began to happen. The more she watched him, the harder it became to see him as just a name on a document. One night, she found him in the kitchen alone, sitting at the table with his head in his hands. "You okay, sir?" she asked, standing by the counter. He lifted his head and gave a tired half-smile. "You ever feel like no matter what you fix, there's always something you broke that you didn't see in time?" She frowned. "I don't understand." He leaned back in his chair. "Years ago," he said quietly, "there was an accident at one of my plants. A machine malfunctioned. Someone died. His wife was injured badly. Legal handled it. Settlements, agreements. They told me it was resolved, and I let myself believe it was." He stared at his hands. "But sometimes," he continued, "I wonder what happened to them. If the money actually helped, or if they're still picking up the pieces while I go to galas and talk about charity." Her throat tightened. He was talking about her mother, her father, her family. She gripped the cloth in her hand, nails biting into the fabric. "Do you ever try to find them?" she asked. "I think about it," he said. "But I don't know if they'd want to see me. To them, I'm the man who showed up too late and left too early." He gave a humorless laugh. "You probably didn't expect your boss to dump his guilt on you." She swallowed hard. "Maybe they don't want money. Maybe they want to know you, remember?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. He looked at her for a long moment. "I do. More than they'll ever know." For the first time, Sorie's anger didn't feel clean. It felt complicated, and that scared her more than the anger ever did. Because revenge was supposed to be simple, but the man sitting in front of her wasn't. That conversation in the kitchen haunted her for days. She kept replaying his words in her head, the way his voice had cracked when he talked about the factory, the way he'd stared at his hands like they were covered in something he couldn't wash off. He remembered. That was the part that twisted something inside her chest. For years, she'd imagined him as a man who signed papers and forgot names, who moved on while her family stayed trapped in the wreckage. But he hadn't forgotten. He carried it. Differently than she did, but he carried it. And that made everything harder. She continued her work, cleaning, cooking, observing. But now, every time she passed him in the hallway or served him dinner, she saw something she didn't want to see: regret. One afternoon, she was dusting the bookshelves in his office when he walked in. He stopped when he saw her. "Sorry," he said. "I didn't know you were in here." "I'm almost done, sir." He nodded but didn't leave. Instead, he walked to the window and stood there, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city. "Can I ask you something?" he said after a moment. "Of course. Do you think people can really change?" he asked. "Or do we just learn to live with what we've done?" The question caught her off guard. Have you ever had someone ask you something that felt like they were really asking about themselves? "I think people can change," she said carefully, "but only if they're willing to face what they've done, not hide from it." He turned to look at her. "And if they face it too late? If the damage is already done?" She met his gaze. "Then maybe the point isn't to undo it. Maybe it's to stop making it worse." Something shifted in his expression. Not relief. Something closer to understanding. "Thank you," he said quietly. She nodded and left the room before he could see the tears gathering in her eyes. Because she didn't want to feel sorry for him. She didn't want to see him as human. It made the plan she'd been building so much harder to carry out. That night, lying in her small room, she stared at the ceiling and whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad. I know what I came here to do, but he's not what I thought he'd be." Her phone buzzed. A message from the clinic. Her mother's medication was running low again. The costs were climbing. She closed her eyes. She couldn't afford to get soft now. Her family needed her. Her mother needed her. And the only reason she had this job, this roof over her head, this chance to send money home, was because she'd walked through those gates with a purpose. Revenge. But revenge was easier when the person you blamed was a monster. It was harder when he apologized to staff for things that weren't their fault, when he thanked her for meals she cooked, when she overheard him raising his voice in a meeting, not at a worker, but at an executive who tried to cover up a safety issue. She wanted to hate him cleanly. But the cracks in his armor kept showing her someone she didn't expect, someone trying, and that terrified her, because if he wasn't the villain she needed him to be, then what was she doing here? The next morning, she found something that brought the anger rushing back. She was emptying the trash in the guest bathroom when she saw it, a receipt crumpled at the bottom. She almost ignored it, but something made her smooth it out. A jewelry store. Expensive. A bracelet purchased 2 weeks ago. She thought nothing of it until later that day, when Lyra walked through the house wearing a new bracelet. Gold, delicate, beautiful. Soraya smiled and complimented her. Lyra thanked her, touching it lightly. "A gift from someone who actually pays attention," she said under her breath. Soraya's stomach dropped. Because Alec hadn't bought that bracelet. She'd seen his credit card statements while organizing his office. He didn't shop at that store. Someone else had bought it, and Lyra wore it in his house like a secret she enjoyed keeping. That night, Soraya stood in front of the mirror in her room, staring at her own reflection. She'd been softening. She'd been questioning. She'd been letting empathy cloud her purpose. But this reminder that while Alec carried guilt, his wife carried lies, it sharpened her focus again. She whispered to herself, "He might be trying to be better, but that doesn't erase what he did. And it doesn't mean he doesn't deserve to see the truth about his own life." For the first time, Soraya's anger didn't feel clean. It felt complicated. And that scared her more than the anger ever did, because now she wasn't just fighting him, she was fighting herself. The day Rian arrived, the atmosphere changed. He stepped into the house like he owned a piece of it already. Perfect suit, perfect hair, a smile that knew it was charming. Lyra greeted him at the door herself, her laughter softer, warmer than usual. "Rian, you're here," she said, touching his arm. "Come in. This place looks better every time," he said, eyes sliding over the marble. "The art, the view. You really landed on your feet, Lyra." "It's not mine," she said. "It's my husband's. For now," he replied under his breath. Soraya pretended to wipe the console table by the stairs, watching from the corner of her eye. Lyra introduced him as her cousin, but nothing about the way they stood close or dropped their voices felt like family. No cousin she knew brushed hair off someone's shoulder like that. No cousin held eye contact that long. When you see two people together, you can feel when something's off, can't you? They sat in the living room. She brought them drinks. As she placed the tray down, she heard Rian say quietly, "So, You're still putting up with him? For the moment, Lyra replied, tilting her head. But I don't plan to live in his shadow forever. You shouldn't, Rian said. You were always meant for more. Her laugh carried a sharp edge. From the kitchen, Soraya listened. Her original plan had been clear. Get inside. Learn his world. Find a way to leak something so damaging that it would crash him publicly. An affair that was valuable information. A cheating wife. A scandal. A messy divorce. It might not destroy him, but it would crack his image. She stored it in her mental ledger. Lyra's coldness, Rian's presence, the way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. At first, their betrayal felt like an opportunity. Over the next few days, Rian became a regular presence. He stopped buzzing the gate and started walking in like he belonged there. Lyra changed outfits before he arrived. Her perfume stronger, her laughter lighter. Soraya noticed patterns. Alex's calendar on the fridge showed days he'd be out late. Those were the days Ryan stayed longer. The days the door to the upstairs guest room stayed closed just a little too long. One afternoon, while cleaning near the home office, she found Lyra and Rian whispering inside with the door halfway closed. If the board ever finds out, Ryan was saying, his reputation takes a hit. Investors panic. That's the point, Lyra replied. He pretends he's better than everyone, but his house is just as broken as anyone's. Why shouldn't I use what I have? Soraya backed away before they saw her, heart racing. That night, lying in her narrow bed, she stared at the ceiling, thinking. She already had the past accident, her family's story, the settlement documents with Alex's signature. If she added proof of his wife's affair, the world would devour it. Billionaire's marriage in tatters was a headline people loved. Her mind shifted back into revenge mode. Maybe she didn't need to hurt him physically. Maybe she just had to let the truth out. To the media, to his competitors, to his world. Let them tear at his image the way the accident had torn at her life. She quietly began collecting little pieces, the way Lyra's lipstick smudged when Rian left, the second wine glass in the guest room, the overheard conversations that sounded nothing like cousins catching up. She wasn't just cleaning anymore. She was building a case. She told herself it was justice, even as a small voice in the back of her mind whispered, "And what if he's trying to be better now?" She pushed that voice down. Revenge was simpler, until it wasn't. One evening, she was sweeping the back hallway when she heard Lyra's voice drift from the sitting room. "That maid is always around," Rian muttered. "You need to be more careful." "She's nothing," Lyra replied. "She needs this job more than she needs trouble." "And if she talks?" he asked. "She won't," Lyra said. "She still believes doing the right thing matters. That's her weakness." Soraya swallowed. She moved closer, careful, staying in the shadow behind the slightly opened door. "You said you didn't want to live like this forever," Rian said. "So how long are you going to just complain about him?" Lyra sighed softly. "He's already killing himself. Stress, meetings, pressure. I'm just speeding up the process." Soraya's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" Rian asked. "You told me yourself," Lyra murmured. "His heart isn't what it used to be. He ignores his own body. A small push, the right nudge, and no one will question it when he falls. Overworked billionaire dies suddenly. They'll eat it up." Rian was quiet for a moment. "You're serious," he finally said. "You wanted a life with me," she replied. "You wanted his money, his accounts. I'm giving us both what we want." The broom slipped in Soraya's hand. She caught it, heart pounding. She had come here planning to ruin him. She had imagined scandals, exposure, maybe even financial ruin. But death? She hadn't planned on that. At first, their betrayal felt like an opportunity. She had no idea it would soon turn into something else entirely. Something deadly. Soraya couldn't unhear those words. "I'm just speeding up the process." They echoed in her mind while she cooked breakfast, while she folded laundry, while she passed Alec in the hallway and forced herself to smile. She wanted to tell herself it wasn't her problem, that whatever Lyra and Rian were planning had nothing to do with her mission. She came here for revenge, not to save anyone. But the weight of what she'd heard sat in her chest like a stone. Still, she pushed it aside. For now, because there was work to do. Her kind of work. Over the next few days, she became a ghost with a purpose. She moved through the house collecting proof. Not of murder. Not yet. That felt too big. Too dangerous. But proof of the affair. Proof of betrayal. Proof that Alex's perfect life was rotting from the inside. She found text messages on Lyra's phone when it was left charging in the guest room. She took photos with her own phone, hands shaking. Can't wait to be done with this charade. Once he's out of the picture, we can finally live. You're mine. He's just borrowing you. Each message felt like gasoline on the fire she'd been building. When you find out someone's biggest secret, do you expose it or keep it as leverage? She found receipts, hotel rooms booked under fake names, dinners at restaurants across town, gifts purchased on days Alec was traveling. She photographed everything. She also found something else. Financial documents in Lyra's private drawer. Transfers. Accounts under different names. Money being moved quietly, piece by piece, like someone was preparing an escape. Soriea's mind raced. This wasn't just an affair. This was a plan. A long, calculated plan to leave Alec with nothing. And now, apparently, to make sure he didn't live long enough to fight back. That night, sitting alone in her room, she spread the evidence across her bed. Photos, screenshots, receipts. Enough to destroy Lyra's image. Enough to humiliate Alec publicly. She imagined the headlines. Billionaire's wife caught an affair with cousin. Alec Donovan's marriage a sham. The man who had everything lost it all. It would be justice, her kind. The world would see him the way she'd seen him for years. Broken, exposed, human. But then she thought about the conversation in his kitchen. The way his voice had cracked when he talked about the factory accident. The way he'd said, "I wonder what happened to them." He remembered. He carried guilt. And now his wife was planning to kill him. She closed her eyes. "This isn't about him," she whispered to herself. "This is about what he did to my family. He deserves to feel what we felt. But did he deserve to die?" The question clawed at her. She told herself it was justice, that exposing his broken marriage would be enough, that she didn't need to get involved in whatever dark thing Lyra and Rian were planning. Even as a small voice in the back of her mind whispered, "And what if he's trying to be better now?" She pushed that voice down. Revenge was simpler, until it wasn't. The next morning, Alec called her into his office. Her heart jumped. Did he know? Had he found her going through things? But when she entered, he was standing by the window, looking tired. "Soriea," he said, turning to face her. "I wanted to thank you." She blinked. "For what, sir?" "For being honest with me the other day," he said. "About people needing to face what they've done. I've been thinking about that. A lot." He paused. "I'm going to try to track down the family from the factory accident," he said. "I don't know if they'll want to hear from me, but I need to try. I need to do more than just write checks and hope it fixes things." Her breath caught. He was talking about her family, about finding her, and he had no idea she was standing right in front of him. "That's good, sir," she managed. "I think they'd appreciate that." He nodded. "I hope so." He looked at her for a moment longer, then smiled faintly. "You've been a blessing in this house, Soriea. I mean that." She left the office before the tears could fall. Because now, standing in the hallway, with evidence of his wife's betrayal in her room and a murder plot unfolding under his roof, she realized something terrifying. She had come here to destroy him, but if she stayed silent now, someone else would do it for her. And unlike her revenge, theirs wouldn't stop at humiliation. Theirs would end with a funeral. She told herself it was justice, even as a small voice in the back of her mind whispered, "And what if he's trying to be better now?" She pushed that voice down. Revenge was simpler, until it wasn't. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Soriea was cleaning the hallway near the sitting room when she heard their voices again. Low, urgent. She froze, cloth in hand, heart already starting to race. "You're sure about this?" Rian's voice. "I'm tired of waiting," Lyra replied. Every day, I wake up in this house, feels like a prison sentence. Then leave him. And get what? A divorce settlement tied up in court for years? His lawyers will bleed me dry. No, this way is cleaner. Sorie's stomach dropped. She moved closer to the door, staying in the shadow, barely breathing. When? Rian asked. Soon, Lyra said. He's been complaining about headaches. Exhaustion. No one will question it. Overworked billionaire finally burns out. It happens all the time. And the substance? Already purchased. Untraceable. It'll look like his heart just gave out. Stress-induced. Natural causes. Silence. Then Rian spoke again, quieter. You're really going to do this? We're really going to do this? Lyra corrected. This is for us. For the life we deserve. He's standing in the way of that. Sorie's hand gripped the cloth so tight her knuckles turned white. When you hear something you can't unhear, does it change you forever? How long until it's ready? Rian asked. A few days, Lyra said. Maybe a week. I need to be careful. Time it right. Make sure he's alone when it happens. And the maid? What about her? She's always around, Rian said. What if she sees something? Lyra laughed softly. She's nobody. A girl desperate enough to work here for scraps. Even if she suspects something, she won't say anything. She needs this job too much. The words hit Soria like a slap. She backed away from the door, legs shaking, heart pounding so loud she was sure they'd hear it. She made it to her room and closed the door behind her. Her hands trembled as she sat on the edge of her bed. This was real. They weren't just talking. They weren't just fantasizing. They were planning, actively, carefully, and it was going to happen soon. She thought about all the evidence she'd gathered, the affair, the financial transfers, the secret messages. She'd been building a case to destroy his reputation. But Lyra and Rian weren't interested in reputation. They wanted him dead. And the worst part, the part that made her stomach turn, was the thought that whispered in the back of her mind. Isn't this what you wanted? She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to push it away. No, that wasn't what she wanted. She wanted him to feel what her family felt. To lose something. To understand pain. To be exposed. But death? That was different. That was permanent. That was murder. If you spent years hating someone, would you let them die if it meant you didn't have to lift a finger? Her breath came faster. She thought about her father, the day he didn't come home, the emptiness that followed, the way her mother's eyes had gone hollow, the way her brothers had stopped laughing. Alec Donovan's signature had been on the papers that closed that chapter of their lives like it was just business. But this wasn't business. This was cold-blooded murder. And if she stayed silent, she would be just as guilty as them. She pressed her palms to her face. God, what do I do? She whispered. If I say something, I lose everything. My job, my mother's treatment, everything I've worked for. But if she said nothing, a man would die. A man who, despite everything, had shown her kindness, who carried guilt, who was trying, however imperfectly, to be better. She pulled her hands away and stared at the wall. Her father's face appeared in her mind. Not angry, not accusing, just sad. What would you want me to do, Dad? She whispered. She already knew the answer. Her father had been a good man. A man who believed in doing the right thing even when it cost him. Even when it was hard. And the right thing wasn't letting someone die just because it was convenient for her revenge. But knowing the right thing and doing the right thing were two very different battles. For a terrifying, shameful moment, the thought whispered again, "Isn't this what you wanted?" Her stomach turned. She didn't know anymore. Sleep did not visit her that night. She lay curled on her side, facing the wall, listening to the faint hum of the city beyond the mansion, the occasional car passing in the distance. The world outside moved on like nothing was wrong. Inside her, everything was. You wanted him to feel what you felt. A dark voice in her mind said, you wanted him to lose something suddenly, to have the ground ripped out from under him. Images flooded her mind. Her mother collapsed in the hospital hallway after the news. Her father's empty chair at the dinner table. Her brothers' scared faces when they realized Dad wasn't coming back. the document, with his neat, expensive signature that couldn't sign away their pain. "If you stay quiet, it's not your fault," the voice argued. "You didn't poison him. You didn't plan it. You're just letting things happen." Another voice, softer but fiercer, pushed back. "If you see evil and walk away, you become part of it." Her mother's words. Words spoken from a clinic bed, with tired eyes and too much wisdom. Soraya pressed her palms to her eyes until small stars burst behind her lids. "God," she whispered, "what do I do? If I speak, we might lose everything. If I stay silent, he might lose his life." She remembered him sitting in the kitchen, talking about the factory accident, how regret had weighed on his voice, how he had quietly advanced her pay for her mother's treatment without asking questions. He had hurt her family. He had also helped her without knowing who she was. People weren't simple. Revenge had been easier when he was just a name. If someone who wronged you years ago showed you kindness today, would you still want them destroyed? Now, he was a person, flawed, guilty, trying. She turned onto her back, staring at the ceiling. The ceiling didn't have answers either. She thought about what would happen if she stayed silent. Lyra would poison him. He'd die. It would be called natural causes. Lyra and Rion would take everything. And Soraya would go back to her life, carrying a secret that would rot inside her forever. She thought about what would happen if she spoke. She'd lose her job, her income. Her mother's treatment would be at risk again. Lyra would destroy her reputation. Maybe no one would even believe her. Both paths felt like falling. But one path had a body at the end of it, and the other just had fear. She sat up in bed, wrapping her arms around her knees. "What kind of person do you want to be?" she asked herself in a whisper. The answer wasn't simple, but it was clear. She saw her reflection faintly in the window. Young, tired, caught between two versions of herself. The version that came here for revenge, and the version that couldn't let a man die just because it was convenient. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Another message from the clinic. Reminder about payments. Reminder about medication schedules. Reminder that her family's survival depended on her staying employed. She picked up the phone and stared at the screen. Then she thought about her father again. Not the man who died in the factory. The man who taught her to stand up for what was right even when it cost something. The man who once walked 3 miles in the rain to return a wallet he found because it's not ours to keep. The man who believed that character wasn't what you did when people were watching. It was what you did when no one would ever know. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I miss you, Dad," she whispered. "I don't know how to do this without you." But she did know, because he'd already taught her. By dawn, she hadn't found a perfect answer. But she knew one thing. If he died, and she had done nothing, the weight of that silence would crush her for the rest of her life. No matter what she had planned when she walked through his gate, no matter what he had done to her family, she couldn't live under that. She got out of bed and walked to the window. The sky was turning from black to deep blue. The city was waking up. Somewhere in this house, Lyra was probably sleeping peacefully, confident in her plan. Somewhere in this house, Alec was probably already awake, carrying guilt he didn't know how to put down. And somewhere in this house, Soraya was standing at a crossroads. Revenge or redemption. Silence or scream. The person she came here to be, or the person she was raised to be. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. "I'm sorry if this costs us everything. But I can't let him die. I just can't. Because in the end, her father hadn't raised her to be the kind of person who watched evil happen and did nothing. Even if the person being saved was the one she came to destroy. The day it almost ended didn't look dramatic. The sky was gray, heavy clouds gathering, like they were waiting for permission to cry. The air hung thick and still. The mansion felt quieter than usual. Alec came home early. He moved slower than usual. Shoulders slumped, a hand pressed to his forehead. He passed Soraya in the hallway, offering her a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Long day, sir?" she asked. He let out a short laugh. "Long year. Lost a deal that took months to build. People will lose jobs. I'll fix what I can, but my head is pounding. Do you want some tea? She nearly asked. But the words died on her tongue. I just need to lie down, he said instead, already turning toward the bedroom. Don't let anyone disturb me for a while. She nodded, watching him go. From the upstairs landing, Lyra watched too. Soraya could almost see the calculations in her eyes from where she stood near the kitchen doorway. Once he disappeared into the bedroom, Lyra waited, just long enough. Then she walked into the kitchen like she had a script to follow. Cup, kettle, tea, sugar. She moved calmly, almost gently, like a caring wife. If someone had taken a photo at that moment, it would have looked innocent. It was anything but. From the shadow of the hallway, Soraya watched her set the cup down on the counter, then unzip her handbag. That small glass bottle appeared again, catching the kitchen light for just a second. Lyra twisted off the white cap. The powder fell silently into the steaming tea, dissolving as she stirred. Stir, stir, stir. Every circle of the spoon scratched against Soraya's nerves. Have you ever watched something terrible happen in slow motion and felt frozen in place? Lyra put the bottle back in her bag, zipped it, and lifted the tray. The cup rattled softly against the saucer. As she walked toward the bedroom, the storm outside finally sent down one single, heavy drop of rain. Soraya stood frozen. If she did nothing now, she knew exactly what would happen. He would drink the tea. He would feel tired, maybe a little dizzy. He'd close his eyes thinking he just needed rest, and he wouldn't wake up. The doctors would call it heart failure, stress-induced. The media would write articles about the pressures of wealth. People would shake their heads and say, he worked himself to death. Lyra would cry beautifully at the funeral. Rian would stand in the back, pretending to comfort her. And within months, they'd be living off his money, spending his legacy, erasing his memory. Her revenge would arrive for her by someone else's hand, and it would be called natural causes. Every step Lyra took up the stairs felt like a countdown. Soraya's body wouldn't move at first. Her legs felt like stone, her lungs like they had forgotten how to pull in air. The words from last night whirled in her head. If you stay silent, you become part of it. Her mind screamed at her to think it through. If she stopped this, she'd lose her job. Her mother's treatment would be at risk. Lyra would come for her. Maybe no one would believe her. Maybe she'd be thrown out, considered crazy. If she stayed quiet, no one would know. Except her. She saw her reflection faintly in the oven door. Wide eyes, shaking shoulders. What kind of person do you want to be? She asked herself in a whisper. The answer wasn't simple, but it was clear. She ripped off the apron, let it fall to the floor, and ran. The house had never seen her move like that. She flew up the back staircase, heart slamming, breath burning her throat. Her shoes barely touched the steps. By the time she reached the hallway leading toward the bedroom, she heard Lyra's voice inside, low and soft. It'll help your headache. Just drink it all, okay? You'll feel better. I promise. Soraya didn't knock. She crashed the door open. The tray jerked in Lyra's hands. Alec, half sitting on the bed, blinked in confusion, the cup already in his hand. And the scream ripped out of Soraya's chest like it had been trapped there for years. Don't drink it or else! For a split second, time split. In one version, she had stayed downstairs. The tea had reached his lips. His heart had failed in his sleep. Everyone would have called it stress. In the version she chose, she stepped right into the line of fire, not as an avenger, but as the only thing standing between him and the death she'd once thought he deserved. The room exploded into chaos. Don't drink it or else. Soraya's voice tore through the air like thunder. Her chest heaved. Her hands shook. Her eyes locked on the cup in Alec's hand, inches from his lips. He froze. Lyra's face went from shock to rage in a heartbeat. What are you doing? Lyra snapped, spinning toward her. Have you lost your mind? But Soraya didn't look at her. She kept her eyes on Alec. Please, sir, she said, voice trembling. Don't drink it. If you drink that tea, you won't wake up. The cup trembled in his hand. Soraya, he said slowly. What are you talking about? She's insane. Lyra cut in, stepping forward. Alec, She's been acting strange for days. I told you we should have let her go. I'm not crazy, Sorier said, her voice stronger now. I watched her. In the kitchen. Just now. She pulled a small bottle from her bag. White cap. Clear glass. She poured powder into your tea and stirred until it disappeared. Alec's eyes widened slightly. Lyra's jaw clenched. That's a lie. Why would I hurt my own husband? She's making this up because she's obsessed with you. She watches you, follows you around. This is sick. If I'm lying, Sorier said, turning to face Lyra directly, then let him see your bag, right now. The room went silent. Have you ever seen someone's face change when they realize they've been caught? Lyra's confident mask cracked just enough. You're not searching my things, she said, voice shaking with anger. I won't be humiliated by the help. Alec stood slowly, still holding the cup. He looked at it, then at Lyra, then at Sorier. Your bag, he said quietly. Bring it here. Alec, you can't be serious. Either you bring it, he replied, his voice cold now, or I call security, and they bring it. Lyra's hands curled into fists at her sides. For a moment, Sorier thought she might refuse, thought she might storm out, thought she might try to grab the bag and run. But she didn't. She walked to the dresser, grabbed her handbag, and threw it onto the bed. Fine, she spat. Embarrass me. Prove her wrong. Go ahead. Alec set the cup down on the nightstand, carefully, like it might explode. He opened the bag. Lipstick, compact, keys, wallet, tissues. His hand moved deeper. Then he pulled out the small glass bottle. White cap. Barely any powder left inside. He held it up to the light. The room seemed to stop breathing. Lyra's face drained of color. That's not mine. Someone put that there. She put it there. She's been in our room. She could have planted it. Alec stared at the bottle, then at the cup of tea sitting beside it. Why would she plant evidence? He asked slowly, and then screamed to stop me from drinking it. Lyra opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Sorier felt tears burning her eyes, but she didn't let them fall, because in that moment, she realized something. She had spent weeks planning his downfall, gathering secrets, building a case, imagining the day his perfect world would crack. But when the moment came, when his life was actually on the line, she didn't hesitate. She ran. She screamed. She chose his life over her revenge. If you had seconds to decide between justice and mercy, which would you choose? Alex set the bottle down next to the cup. Side by side, they told a story even before any test. He looked at Lyra, really looked at her, like he was seeing her for the first time. Call Dr. Harris, he said, his voice flat. Tell him to come now, and bring a testing kit. Alec, please. Now, Lyra. She flinched at the tone. Sorier's legs felt weak. She gripped the doorframe to steady herself. She thought exposing his wife's affair would be enough revenge. She thought watching his perfect marriage crack would satisfy the anger she'd carried for years. She never thought she'd be standing here, watching him hold poison meant for his own body. And she definitely never thought the person who wanted him dead would be sleeping beside him every night. Lyra pulled out her phone with shaking hands. But her eyes, when they flicked toward Sorier, weren't filled with fear. They were filled with pure, cold hatred, because Sorier had just done something unforgivable. She'd gotten in the way, not as an avenger, but as the only thing standing between him and the death she'd once thought he deserved. The bottle sat on the nightstand like evidence at a crime scene. Next to it, the cup of tea, still warm, still deadly. Alec stared at both, his face unreadable, but his hands, those steady hands that signed billion-dollar deals without shaking, were trembling now. Alec, Lyra said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. You can't possibly believe her. She's a stranger. I'm your wife. He didn't look at her. He kept staring at the bottle. How long? He asked quietly. What? How long have you been planning this? The question hung in the air like smoke. Lyra's eyes darted between him and Sorier. I wasn't planning anything. That bottle isn't mine. She's setting me up. Can't you see that? Then explain the texts, Soria said. Both of them turned to look at her. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to continue. The messages on your phone, the ones to Rian, about being done with the charade, about finally living once he's out of the picture. Lyra's face went pale. You went through my phone? She whispered. I saw it when you left it charging in the guest room, Soria said. I saw the receipts too, the hotel rooms, the dinners, the gifts, and I heard you, both of you, talking about how his heart wasn't what it used to be, how a small push would look like stress finally catching up. When someone's lies start unraveling, you can see it in their eyes. Have you ever watched that happen? Lyra's mouth opened, but no words came out. Alec finally turned to face his wife. Rian, he said slowly. Your cousin. She swallowed. Alec, I can explain. Is he your cousin? Silence. Answer me. No, she whispered. He's not. The word dropped like a stone into still water. Alec's jaw tightened. He walked to the window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the gray sky. Rain had started falling harder, now streaking down the glass. How long? He asked again, quieter this time. 2 years, Lyra admitted. But it's not what you think. I didn't mean for it to happen. You were always working, always gone. I was lonely. So you decided to kill me? No. She stepped forward, tears streaming now. I never wanted that. That was Rian's idea. He said it was the only way we could be together without losing everything. Alec turned around slowly. And you agreed. She didn't answer. He laughed, but it was hollow, empty. You know what's funny? I've been carrying guilt for years over people I hurt without meaning to. And here you are, planning to kill me on purpose, and asking me to understand. He walked back to the nightstand and picked up the bottle. Dr. Harris is on his way, he said. He'll test this, and if it's what Soria says it is, the police will be next. Lyra's legs seemed to give out. She sat on the edge of the bed, face in her hands. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. But the words felt hollow, like something said because it was expected, not because it was felt. Alec looked at Soria, really looked at her. Why did you do it? He asked. Do what, sir? Save me. You didn't have to. You could have walked away. Let it happen. No one would have known you saw anything. Her throat tightened. I know. So, why? Because I came here hating you, she thought. Because I blamed you for my father's death. Because I wanted you to suffer the way my family suffered. But when I saw that cup in your hand, I realized something. Revenge isn't worth becoming a murderer, even if I didn't pull the trigger myself. Because it was the right thing to do, she said simply. He nodded slowly, like he understood more than she'd said out loud. 20 minutes later, Dr. Harris arrived with his medical kit and a portable testing device. He worked in silence, running tests on the powder in the bottle and the residue in the tea. The room was so quiet, Soria could hear her own heartbeat. Finally, Dr. Harris looked up. This substance, he said carefully, is a cardiac toxin. In the amount detected in the tea, it would have caused heart failure within hours, maybe less. He looked at Alec. If you'd drunk this, you wouldn't have survived the night. The words settled over the room like a blanket of ice. Alec sat down slowly on the chair by the window. He didn't say anything, just stared at the floor. Lyra sobbed quietly on the bed, and Soria stood by the door, realizing that she'd just saved the life of the man she came here to destroy. And in that moment, he finally saw how close he had come to never waking up again. After Dr. Harris left and the police were called, Alec asked everyone to leave the room, except Soria. Lyra stood, mascara streaking down her face. Alec, please, not now, he said quietly. Just go. She left, escorted by security to a separate room to wait for the authorities. The door closed, and it was just the two of them. Alec sat in the chair by the window. Soria stood near the door, unsure if she should sit or stay standing. One question, he said softly. Why did you save me? Both their hearts seemed to beat louder in the silence. If what you're saying is true, he continued, you had every reason to walk away. You could have let this happen, and no one would ever know you had any part in it. You would have kept your job, your pay, your mother's treatment. You probably could have watched from a distance as my life fell apart and told yourself it was justice. Silence. And yet, he said, you screamed. Saurier's throat tightened. He turned to look at her. I'm not a saint, and I didn't come here for a fresh start. I came here for revenge. His eyes widened slightly. What? She nodded, tears building. You don't remember my mother, but you remember the factory accident, the woman who lost her husband, the settlement you signed. His face went pale. My mother, she continued, is that woman. My father never came home. Our home fell apart. The money helped for a while, but you left us with more questions than answers. I spent years hating you. You were the face of everything that went wrong. She took a shaky breath. When someone tells you they came into your life to destroy you, how do you even respond? When I saw the job listing for this house, I didn't see opportunity, she said. I saw a door into your life. I came here to hurt you. Not with poison, with the truth. I wanted to gather everything. Your scandals, your secrets, this broken marriage, and show the world you weren't who you pretended to be. She wiped her cheeks roughly. But then I heard them planning your death, she whispered. And I realized I had a choice. Let someone else's evil do my work for me, or stop it and become the kind of person my mother raised me to be. Her voice cracked. I didn't scream to save a billionaire, she said. I screamed to save myself from becoming like them. The room held its breath. Alex stood slowly and walked toward her. She thought he might be angry, thought he might tell her to pack her things and leave immediately. Instead, he stopped a few feet away and said, "Thank you." She blinked. "For what?" "For being honest," he said, "and for choosing mercy when revenge was easier." He ran a hand through his hair. "I don't blame you for hating me. I've hated myself for years over that accident. I told myself I did what I could. That legal handled it. That settlements were enough. But they weren't, were they?" She shook her head. "Your father had a name," he said quietly. "A family, a life. And I reduced all of that to a signature on a document." He looked at her with something that felt like understanding. "You came here to make me pay. And you had every right to, but you didn't. When it mattered most, you chose something different." Tears streamed down her face now. "I'm not better than them," she whispered. "I planned to ruin you. I gathered evidence. I was building a case to expose you publicly. I wanted your world to fall apart the way mine did. But you stopped," he said. "That's the difference. You had the chance to let me die, and you chose my life instead." He stepped closer. "That's not weakness, that's strength." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I don't know if I can forgive you for what happened to my father," she admitted. "But I know I don't want you dead anymore. I don't want your empire to burn. I just want you to do better with the power you have." He nodded slowly. "Then that's what I'll do." For a moment, they stood there, two broken people who had every reason to destroy each other, choosing not to. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. The police were coming for Lyra. But inside that room, something else was happening. Two people who came into each other's lives carrying hate were choosing something different. She wiped her cheeks roughly. "I didn't scream to save a billionaire," she said again, her voice steadier now. "I screamed to save myself from becoming like them. Because in the end, mercy wasn't about him. It was about her." "Doctor," Harris stood in the bedroom with an expression that said everything before his words did. "I ran a quick test," he said, holding the small analyzer in his hand. "We'll still send samples to the lab for a full report, but this is enough for now. The powder is a toxic substance that affects the heart. In the amount we detected in the tea, it would have been fatal if consumed." Fatal. The word dropped like a stone in a still pond. Alec looked at the cup, then at the bottle, then at the door where Lyra had been escorted out. His wife, the woman he'd once believed would grow old beside him. Based on this preliminary evidence, Daniel, his lawyer who had arrived with Dr. Harris, said quietly, The police will need to be called. Mrs. Donovan should not say anything without an attorney present. Alec nodded slowly. Call them. Within 30 minutes, 2 police officers arrived at the mansion. They moved through the house with quiet authority. Statements were taken. Dr. Harris's results recorded. The bottle bagged as evidence. The teacup preserved. Soraya sat in a chair in the hallway, giving her statement to one officer while another spoke to Alec in his study. She explained what she'd seen, what she'd heard, the conversations between Lyra and Rian, the powder being poured into the tea. Her hands shook as she spoke, but her voice stayed steady. Have you ever had to tell the truth, knowing it would change someone's life forever? When the officers were done with her, they went to the room where Lyra waited. Soraya watched from the hallway as they entered. 5 minutes later, they emerged with Lyra between them. Handcuffs gleamed on her wrists. Mrs. Donovan, the officer said, you are under arrest for attempted murder. They read her rights as they walked her toward the front door. Lyra's makeup was ruined. Her perfect hair, disheveled, her designer dress wrinkled. As they led her past Soraya, their eyes met. You think you're better than me now? Lyra hissed. You came here to destroy him. Don't pretend you're some saint because you screamed. No, Soraya replied softly. I'm not better. I'm just done letting hate make my choices. Lyra was taken out of the house, heels clicking on the marble like a final, bitter rhythm. Alec watched from the top of the stairs. His face was unreadable, but his eyes carried weight. The last illusions about his marriage breaking quietly inside him. The police also issued a warrant for Rian's arrest. He was found 2 days later trying to board a flight out of the country. He didn't resist. Both of them would face trial. Both of them would answer for what they'd planned. But justice, when it arrived, didn't feel like victory. It felt hollow. That evening, after everyone had left and the house finally fell silent, Alec sat alone in his study. Papers spread across his desk, legal documents, statements, evidence. Soraya knocked softly on the door. Come in, he said, without looking up. She stepped inside. I wanted to make sure you were okay, sir. He let out a tired laugh. I don't know if I am. He leaned back in his chair. I spent years building this life, this company, this image, and in one afternoon, I found out my wife wanted me dead, and the person who saved me came here, planning to destroy me. He looked at her. How do you process that? I don't know, she admitted. But maybe you start by accepting that people are complicated, that guilt and goodness can exist in the same person, that someone can hurt you and still deserve a chance to be better. He nodded slowly. What happens now? She asked. Now, he said, I try to figure out what kind of man I want to be moving forward, and I start by doing what I should have done years ago. He opened a file on his desk and pulled out a document. Her mother's case, her father's name, the settlement, amount, the quick closure. Seeing it laid out on his desk made something twist painfully inside him. He pushed a new folder toward her. This is an attempt to start making things right. Full coverage for your mother's ongoing treatment. No expiration date. Educational funds for your brothers. A sum in your name, managed properly. Tears blurred her vision. This isn't charity, he said. It's accountability. I can't call it repayment. There's no way to repay what you lost. But I can refuse to hide behind the excuse of, I didn't know anymore. She closed her eyes, letting the tears fall. I don't want to feel like I did this for money, she whispered. You didn't, he replied. You screamed before any of this existed. You saved me when you still had every reason to hate me. This is me refusing to walk away from your family's pain again. She pressed her palm against the folder. For the first time, the weight in her chest felt lighter. Not gone, but lighter. Revenge had once lived only in Soraya's heart. Now he had to decide what he would do with the truth she'd brought into his bedroom. The story hit the news faster than anyone expected. Billionaire's wife, arrested for poisoning plot. Housemaid's warning saves CEO's life. Inside the Donovan mansion, betrayal, greed, and a cup of tea. Reporters lined up outside the gates, cameras ready, waiting for a glimpse of Alec, or better yet, the mysterious maid whose scream had changed everything. He gave a prepared statement through his PR team. He asked for privacy. He said the investigation was ongoing. But inside the house, another story was unfolding. The one between him and the girl who had come to destroy him. Days passed. The police built their case. Lawyers gathered documents. Dr. Harris finalized reports. The world moved on to the next headline, but the core scandal remained alive under the surface. One evening, Alec called Soraya into his study. She stood at the doorway, unsure, wiping invisible dust from her hands. "You can sit," he said gently. She did, perched on the edge of the chair. "You came here for revenge," he began. "You wanted to break me, but when the moment came, you chose not to let someone else's hands do your work." She nodded, staring at the floor. "I'm not proud of that plan," she admitted. "I told myself I just wanted you to feel what we felt, to be exposed, to watch your life crumble. I thought that would fix something inside me. And now?" he asked. "Now I know it wouldn't have," she said. "Because even before I screamed, I'd started seeing you as a human, not just a name on a paper. It made everything complicated. I hated that." He leaned back, exhaling. "When you finally see someone as human instead of a villain, does it make forgiveness easier or harder?" "You had every reason to want me to pay," he said quietly. "I can't undo what happened in that factory. I can't bring back your father. But I can ask you something honestly." He held her gaze. "Do you regret saving me?" he asked. The room was so quiet she could hear both their hearts beating. "No," she said finally, a tear slipping free. "I regret how long I let hate tell me who I was. But I don't regret that scream." He nodded slowly, understanding more than she'd said. "I've been thinking about that night," he said. "The moment you burst through that door, you didn't just save my life. You saved me from believing the worst about humanity, about loyalty, about goodness." He paused. "My wife wanted me dead. The woman I shared a bed with, the woman I thought I knew. But you, a stranger who had every reason to hate me, chose differently." She wiped her cheeks. "I didn't do it to be a hero. I did it because I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent. That's exactly why it mattered," he said. Outside, a camera flash went off near the gate. The media circus continued. But in here, in this quiet study, two people were having a conversation the world would never hear. "What happens to us now?" she asked softly. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know I want to be better. Not because it erases the past, but because the future deserves more than repeated mistakes." She looked at him, really looked at him. Not as the man whose signature had destroyed her family. Not as the billionaire in the mansion. Just as a person trying to carry guilt and move forward at the same time. "I think my father would have liked that answer," she said quietly. He smiled faintly. "I wish I could have met him." "He would have liked you," she said. "Even after everything. He believed people could change if they wanted to badly enough." The words hung in the air like a bridge between two broken worlds. Alex stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "You know what's strange?" he said. "Lyra lived in this house for years, and never once asked about the people affected by my business. But you, who came here planning revenge, asked if they'd want to know." I remembered. He turned to face. "That question changed something in me," he said. "It made me realize guilt isn't enough. Action is what matters." She stood as well. "Then, I hope you keep acting." "I will," he promised. For a moment, they just stood there. Two people who had every reason to destroy each other, choosing something different instead. "Do you think people will understand?" she asked. "Why I saved you, even though I came here hating you?" "I don't know," he said. "But I understand. And maybe that's enough." She nodded. Because in that moment, that scream had saved them both. Him from death, her from becoming someone her father wouldn't recognize. And sometimes, mercy isn't about the person you save. It's about the person you refuse to become. Legal justice did what it could. Lyra faced charges in court. The evidence was clear. Texts between her and Ryan. Purchase records of the toxin. Dr. Harris's testimony. Ryan was eventually found and pulled into the case. his smooth words no match for screenshots of conversations about making it look natural and getting everything once he's gone. The public devoured the story, then slowly moved on, leaving courtrooms and lawyers to sort through the wreckage. Alec's business took a hit at first. Stock dipped. Rumors flew. But then something strange happened. People admired the fact that he didn't try to bury the scandal. He faced it, cooperated, made changes, strengthened internal controls, quietly distanced himself from certain partners. Yet there was another kind of justice he couldn't delegate. The one involving the girl sitting across from him now, her fingers twisting the edge of her apron. He had found her file, not the employment one, the legal one from years ago. Her mother's case, her mother's name, her father's death certificate, the settlement amount, the quick closure. Seeing it laid out on his desk had made something twist painfully inside him. He pushed a new folder toward her now. "What is this?" she asked. An attempt, he said, to start making things right. Inside, she found documents, full coverage for her mother's ongoing treatment, no expiration date, educational funds set aside for her brothers, a lump sum in her name, managed in a way that couldn't be easily stolen or misused by others. "This isn't charity," he said. "It's accountability. I can't call it repayment. There's no way to repay what you lost. But I can refuse to hide behind the excuse of I didn't know anymore." Tears blurred her vision. When someone tries to make up for the past, can money ever truly heal the wound? "I don't want to feel like I did this for money," she whispered. "You didn't," he replied. "You screamed before any of this existed. You saved me when you still had every reason to hate me. This is not a reward. It's me refusing to walk away from your family's pain again." She closed the folder, pressing her palm against it. For the first time, the weight in her chest felt lighter. Not gone, but lighter. "My mother will cry when she hears this," Sorier said softly. "Not because of the money, because someone finally acknowledged that my father mattered, that his life wasn't just a line in a legal file." Alec nodded. "He did matter. And I'm sorry it took me this long to say it out loud." She wiped her eyes. "What about the factory? The other families?" "I'm reviewing every case," he said. "Every settlement, every quick closure. If there are others like your family who were dismissed too easily, I want to make it right." "That's going to cost you," she said. "Good," he replied. "Maybe it should." They sat in silence for a moment. Then she asked, "Why now? Why didn't you do this before?" He leaned back in his chair. "Because I was hiding. I told myself legal handled it, that I'd done my part by signing checks. But the truth is, I didn't want to see the faces. I didn't want to hear the stories. Because if I did, I'd have to admit I wasn't the good man I wanted to believe I was." He looked at her. "You forced me to see, and I hated you for it at first. But now I'm grateful." She shook her head. "I didn't do it to help you grow. I did it because it was right." "I know," he said. "That's why it worked." Outside, the world continued spinning. Reporters filed stories. Courts scheduled hearings. Investors made decisions. But in that study, something quieter and more powerful was happening. A man was choosing accountability over comfort, and a woman was choosing to believe people could change. "Will you stay?" he asked suddenly. She looked up, surprised. "What? Here, in this house?" Not as someone who came for revenge, but as someone who helped me see what I'd been blind to. "I need people like you around me. People who aren't afraid to tell me the truth." She was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I came here with hate, and even though I chose differently in the end, this place still holds a lot of pain for me." He nodded. "I understand. Whatever you decide, you'll have my support, and your family's future is secure either way." She smiled faintly. "Thank you." Justice hadn't arrived the way she'd planned. She'd imagined exposure, scandal, his world crashing down publicly. Instead, it arrived in truth, accountability, and the knowledge that sometimes the person you came to break is willing to stand in the wreckage with you. And maybe that was the truest form of justice. Not revenge, but restoration. There was still one piece left between them. It came out on a quiet afternoon, when the cameras had stopped crowding the gate and the world had moved on to fresher scandals. They stood near the large window in the living room, looking out over the city. The sky was softer now, the stormy gray replaced by a calm blue. "Can I ask you something?" Sorier said. "Of course," Alec replied. "If I hadn't screamed," she asked, "what do you think would have happened? Not just to you, to me." He didn't answer right away. "I would be dead," he said. "That's the obvious part. Lyra would have cried beautifully at the funeral. People would have called it stress. The company would have scrambled, but survived. Maybe you'd get your pay for a while, and then be quietly let go when she didn't need you anymore." She nodded, eyes fixed on the city. "I think about that version a lot," she said, "because in that version, I get my revenge. You're gone. Your name stops appearing on screens, and I walk away with a secret victory." "Would it feel like a victory?" he asked. "No," she said. "It would feel like a stain I could never scrub off." She turned to face him. "There's something I haven't said clearly," she confessed. "I wasn't just angry when I came here. I was planning. I took photos. I saved things. I considered sending them to reporters. I thought if I could destroy your reputation, maybe my family's suffering would finally feel seen." He nodded slowly. "I suspected. You looked at my files differently. You listened differently." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm not," he replied, surprising her. "If you hadn't cared that much about what I'd done, you wouldn't have come here. You wouldn't have screamed. You wouldn't have forced me to face parts of my life I'd quietly filed away." She blinked. "Have you ever been thanked for planning someone's downfall? You came here to destroy me," he said gently, "and you ended up saving me. Not just from that cup, from myself." She swallowed hard. "I didn't save you alone," she said. "You made a choice too. You believed me when it would have been easier not to." They stood there for a moment, the weight of the past and the possibilities of the future balancing between them. "Do you think we can really move forward from this?" she asked. "Or will we always be the girl who came for revenge and the man who caused her pain?" He thought about it. "I think we're already more than that," he said. "We're two people who had every reason to destroy each other and chose something different instead." She smiled faintly. "That sounds better when you say it like that." "It's the truth," he said. "You could have stayed silent. I could have ignored you. But we both chose the harder path, the one that required us to see each other as human." He walked closer to the window. "I've been in rooms with world leaders, with billionaires, with people who shape industries," he said. "But none of them taught me what you did. That courage isn't about power. It's about choosing right when wrong is easier." She felt tears building again. "I don't feel courageous," she admitted. "I feel like I barely made the right choice in time." "That's what courage is," he said. "It's not the absence of fear or doubt. It's acting despite them." They stood side by side, looking out at the city that had no idea what had happened inside these walls. "What do we tell people?" she asked. "About us. About this. The truth," he said. "That you saved my life. That I'm working to make amends for the past. That sometimes the most unexpected connections teach us the most." She nodded. "And if they ask why I came here in the first place," he looked at her, "tell them you came for justice. And you got something better. You got the chance to define what justice means to you." The words settled between them like a bridge. Outside, a bird landed on the balcony railing. It stayed for a moment, then flew off. "I think my father would be proud of me," Sorier said quietly. "Not because I got revenge, but because I chose mercy when hate was easier." "He raised you well," Alec said. "So did my mother," she replied. "Even from a hospital bed, she never stopped teaching me that who we become matters more than what we've been through." He smiled. "I'd like to meet her someday, if she'd allow it." "I think she would," Sorier said. "She believes in second chances." They stood there a little longer, two broken people learning what healing looked like. Sometimes, the most powerful forgiveness isn't a single moment. It's two broken people choosing not to break each other further. And in that choice, They become something neither of them expected. Whole. Soraya didn't stay in the mansion forever. It wasn't meant to be her final home. It was a battlefield, a classroom, a bridge between who she was and who she was becoming. With her mother's treatment secured and her brother's future a little less fragile, she began to think beyond survival for the first time in years. She started taking evening classes online, law, ethics, business. Not to become like the men who had once signed away her life, but to understand the world that had crushed her family so she could help others survive it. One afternoon, she stood with a packed bag near the same gate she'd entered weeks before. Alec met her there. "You're sure about this?" he asked. She smiled sadly. "If I stay, I'll always be the maid who screamed. This house will always feel like the place my hate came to die. I need to know who I am. Outside of that," he nodded. "What will you tell people about this place?" he asked. "That I worked for a man whose choices hurt my family," she said. "And that when it mattered, both of us chose something different than we were raised to expect from our sides of the world." He let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "Will you ever forgive me?" he asked quietly. She thought about it. "I don't know if forgiveness is a switch," she said. "But I know this. I don't want you dead anymore. I don't want your empire to burn. I want you to keep choosing to do better with the power you have. Maybe that's the start of it." He nodded. "If you ever need anything," he said, "not as charity, but as collaboration, call me." She smiled. "If I ever need someone to sign the right papers this time," she replied, "I will." When you leave a place that changed you, do you walk away lighter or heavier? The gate opened. She turned back one last time, looking at the mansion. The glass. The white. Stone. The place where she'd planned revenge and found something else instead. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" he asked. "For believing me when it would have been easier not to. For choosing accountability over comfort. For showing me that people really can change if they want to badly enough." He smiled faintly. "Thank you for screaming." She laughed softly, wiping her eyes. Then she picked up her bag and walked through the gate. The world outside looked the same. Same streets, same sky, same city noise. But she wasn't the same. She'd walked in carrying hate like armor. She walked out carrying hope like a compass. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother. "The doctor said the new treatment is working. I'm getting stronger. I'm so proud of you, my girl." Soraya stopped on the sidewalk, tears streaming down her face. She typed back, "I'm proud of me too, Mom." For years, she'd defined herself by what had been taken from her. By the father she'd lost. By the life they should have had. By the man she blamed. Now, standing on a street corner with her bag in hand and the future uncertain, she realized something. She wasn't a victim anymore. She wasn't an avenger either. She was just Soraya, a young woman who'd faced the worst parts of herself and chosen to become better. And that was enough. She started walking, one step at a time, toward whatever came next. Behind her, the mansion gates closed. Ahead of her, the world opened. Still messy, still unfair, still full of people who had too much and people who had too little. But now, she saw something she hadn't seen before. Choices. She could choose bitterness or growth, revenge or restoration, hate or healing. And for the first time in years, she felt free to choose. The gate opened. She stepped out into a world still messy, still unfair, but now full of choices she hadn't seen before. And somewhere behind her, in that glass mansion, a man sat in his study, looking at the photo of a factory worker whose name he would never forget again. Both of them, in their own ways, were starting over, not because the past was erased, but because they refused to let it write the ending. In the end, the story wasn't about a maid and a billionaire. It was about what people do when pain sits in the driver's seat. Lyra let her pain turn into greed, and greed turned into murder. She chose the fastest path out of her resentment, no matter who it destroyed. Ryan let his hunger for wealth blind him to the weight of a human life. He played with death like it was a business opportunity. Alex spent years hiding behind signatures and systems. He told himself he'd done enough, while people far away bore the cost of his decisions. And Soraya, she carried real scars, real loss, real reasons to want the man in that mansion to suffer. She walked through his gates with revenge in her heart. She gathered secrets. She planned how to break him, but when she found herself at the doorway, watching the cup lift toward his lips, she realized something terrifying. Getting what she thought she wanted might make her lose who she really was. So she screamed, "Don't drink it or else!" That scream didn't erase her anger. It didn't change the past. It didn't magically make everything fair, but it drew a line between who she could have become and who she chose to be. In the end, Alex saw the truth. The woman who wanted his death slept in his bed. The girl who had every reason to hate him chose his life. The marriage ended. The court did its work. The money finally went where it should have gone years ago. Yet the real twist wasn't that the maid saved the billionaire. The real twist was this: she came to his house to destroy him, and the person she ended up saving first was herself. Now the question is for you. If you were in that doorway, holding your own pain, watching someone you blame for everything raise a cup to their lips, what would you do? Would you stay silent and let hate finish the story? Or would you scream and write a different ending, even if no one ever claps for you? Think about the people in your life who've hurt you, the ones whose names still make your chest tight, the ones you've imagined confronting 1,000 times in your head. If you had the chance to watch them fall without lifting a finger, would you take it? Or would you choose something harder? Something that costs you but saves you at the same time? Soraya didn't save Alec because he deserved it. She saved him because she deserved better than becoming what she hated. And maybe that's the lesson we all need to hear. Revenge feels good in your imagination. It feels like justice, like balance, like finally getting even. But in reality, revenge doesn't heal you. It just gives your pain a new place to live. Mercy, on the other hand, sets you free. Not because the person who hurt you earned it, but because you refuse to let their mistakes define your future. If this story moved you, even a little, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Let someone else hear it. Because stories like this remind us that we're all capable of choosing differently. Drop a comment and tell us, would you have screamed? Or would you have stayed silent? Hit that like button if you believe people can change. And subscribe, because we're going to keep telling stories that challenge you, inspire you, and make you think about who you're becoming. This isn't just entertainment. This is a mirror. And if you see yourself in Soraya's struggle, in Alec's guilt, or even in Lyra's desperation, then you know what we're talking about. We all stand at doorways like this, where hate is easier, where revenge feels justified, where silence costs nothing and screaming costs everything. But the people who change the world aren't the ones who stay silent. They're the ones who scream when it matters, even when their voice shakes, even when they're afraid, even when no one's watching. Because sometimes the most unexpected plot twist isn't what happens to the villain. It's what happens inside the person who refuses to become one. So, here's your final question. Who do you want to be? The person who lets pain turn into poison? Or the person who screams and chooses mercy when revenge is easier? The choice, like it was for Soraya, is always yours, and the world is watching to see what you'll do with it. Because sometimes the most unexpected plot twist is choosing mercy when revenge is easier. Thanks for watching. Now go choose who you're going to become.